The Sega Genesis Mini. One of the best classic consoles to come out, or at least I'd like to think so. But a lot of people had issues with Sega releasing the console with a 3-button controller instead of a 6. Sega,
You dumb mother...
No, just kidding. I personally am a big fan of the fact that they released the console with the original 3-button controller, but don't get your panties in a bunch. There are tons of 6-button options out there, and that's exactly what we're going to get into on this episode of Reviews by This Guy. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Reviews by This Guy. And before we get into the topic of today, I'd like to say don't forget to let me spend my money so you don't waste yours by hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to click the little bell if you'd like to keep informed of new videos being uploaded on the We Deem channel. Now the topic of today, it is the Sega Genesis Mini, and no, it's not about this 3-button controller because everybody was upset that that's what Sega included. But like I said in the intro, there's no reason to get your panties in a bunch. There's plenty of options. So let's get them on this table. Alright, here are a couple of options, 3 of which have been featured on the We Deem channel before. This Street Fighter Retrobit controller, and you also got this Hyperkin 6-button controller here, which is USB. You have this Retrobit 6-button controller that was released not too long ago. This is the Ice Blue edition. You got that USB Sega Saturn 6-button controller back there, which I'm pretty sure it's going to work on the Genesis Mini, because I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same controller as this. And you have the 8Bitdo M30 2.4 gig. Now this did release with the Mega SG, and I do have those, which we'll get into later why this controller kind of upsets me, but they just released this USB 1 for the Genesis Mini specifically. But without any more babbling, let's get into these controllers, and don't forget to stay tuned to the end of this video because I'm going to be testing some other USB controllers. Weird, but it will be completely fun because they're not actually Genesis controllers, but they are USB, and why not test them?
Hey, the first 6-button controller we're going to take a look at. Hey, Deadpool. Now you decided to make it into my videos as well. If you're interested in seeing this guy in my photos, you can go ahead and check out my Instagram. Get out of here. Here's the Hyperkin 6-button Genesis controller. It's a pretty decent controller. It's probably going to be the cheapest in this video. And I'd like to compare it to my original 6-button Sega Genesis controller. But that thing is in a closet, where all my video games are, in a bin under a bunch of crap, and I've taken all those games out the closet just to get this guy, and I'm not doing it again. Either way, I'll try my best to compare this to that. For the most part, the form factor is the same. You have the original Sega Genesis D-pad, which feels pretty similar to it. You got your start button in the middle and your 6 action buttons here, and you have a mode button here, which did work on that Flashback HD, sent you back to the main menu, and it does that in a lot of devices. For the most part, the plastic quality is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's as sturdy as the original 6-button Genesis controller. As you can see, this is a complete bust. The Hyperkin USB Genesis controller is not working on the Sega Genesis Mini, so that is an ultimate fail, which is too bad because this was the cheapest controller on the list, and it unfortunately doesn't work. Maybe you can find a cheap Chinese version of this controller that might work, but for now, the Hyperkin is unfortunately a no-go. Alright, next controller we're going to take a look at is this Retrobit Street Fighter to Sega Genesis controller. It is extremely similar to the Hyperkin one. As I said, these are pretty much molded and licensed by Sega, and they're molded to the original Sega Genesis 6-button controller. This is probably going to be my favorite in this video only because of the Street Fighter print and the fact that it's white with red buttons. This has been featured in another video before. You have the original Genesis D-pad, which does feel pretty similar to that. It is really clickish, which we all love. And you got your 6 action buttons and your start in the middle, and up top, just like the Hyperkin, you have a mode button. The only difference between this and the Hyperkin is it has a dual link cable, so this can be used via USB on a PC, Retrobit, which I've tested it on before, and it can also be used on a Genesis. The build quality of the plastic is pretty similar. It is pretty sturdy. I think this controller, I don't even know if it is even going for sale on Amazon anymore. If it is, obviously you can find the links to everything in this video in the description down below.
Alright, here we go with the Retrobit Street Fighter 2 controller. And I'm really upset. Unfortunately, as good as this controller looks and as much as I wanted it to work on that Sega Genesis Mini, as you can see, we got nothing. Nothing's working. I'm pretty sure there's no way to go in here and try to map the buttons or get this to work. Maybe after they get the hack, maybe it'll work. I really would like to see this work, but unfortunately, we got nothing, which is a shame. It worked on the HT games Flashback, and it also works on a regular Sega Genesis, but for some reason, the USB just does not work on here. What a shame.
Next is going to be another official Retrobit Sega Genesis controller. Honestly, definitely love this. They do also now come out in pink. I'm definitely going to think about getting the pink one so I can have a his and her Genesis controller for my Genesis Mini. This is the 8-button arcade pad with USB. It is a clear blue. These came out not that long ago. These are fairly new. We're going to go ahead and unbox this on here and talk about the build quality. Personally, I want to say it's probably going to have the same build quality as that Street Fighter controller, which was pretty decent. So let's go ahead and let's get this guy open and take a look at the controller further. See if I can do it without breaking the box. Kind of help if I took the tape off. That's being difficult. I think they did a really, I forgot to talk about that, but they did a really good job on the packaging. It looks like something that would have came out with the Sega Genesis back in the day, but after all, this is licensed by Sega. Inside the box, you do get a mini manual. Obviously, I don't think any of us really need this, but it does show you the default button mapping here. It shows you all the buttons here. You do have a mode button instead of the mode button being on top. It is down here because this controller does have an L and R button. Throw that to the side. Let's take a look at the controller itself. Yes, the plastic is pretty similar to that Street Fighter. I want to say it's slightly lighter and thinner of a plastic, but it is a pretty good quality. You have your original D-pad, which feels just like the original 6-button Genesis controller. This one says Sega on it. It is officially licensed by Sega, but I'm pretty sure that Street Fighter one was too. Did that one say Sega on it? I don't know. You have the start button. You have a mode button here. You have your 6-button, your 6 action buttons, which they feel pretty similar to the original, but only makes sense because once again, officially licensed. On the top here, which is different, you have an L and R button. Now I guess that would come more in handy if you're playing on a PC and maybe playing some Super Nintendo games, maybe even playing some PlayStation games, but other than that, I don't really think you're going to use that L and R on the Sega Genesis Mini. On the back here, as you can see, it says Sega right here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's there. And you have a pretty lengthy USB cable. As I said, pretty lengthy, 10 foot to be exact. I had to look at the box. And you have the USB connector. I really like the clear blue color. I definitely am going to go pick up that pink one. It's definitely a really good option. This controller I think is going for about $20 on Amazon. If you're looking for a 6-button controller, here you go.
And here is the Retrobit Ice Blue Genesis controller, hooked up by USB, of course. And yes, it's working. At least this one is working. As you can see, it's moving through the menu here. Let's go ahead and see if we can get some Earthworm Jim going. A button's working. Let's start the game. Let's get some gameplay. So far the controller feels really good, but we all expected it to. This is molded at the original Genesis 6-button controller. Start button's working, as you can see. All the buttons are working. And of course I got caught by the dog. Again. Gun's working, all the buttons are working, and it feels really good in the hands. Obviously the L and R button, the L and R buttons aren't going to do nothing. And the mode button, as you can see, brings up the saves. You can go ahead, resume game, return to main menu, game reset. You can save and load, as you can see. Let's go ahead and return to the main menu. Press A. At least we got something working.
And the next controller that we're going to feature in here, an option for your Sega Genesis Mini. I keep forgetting to mention also the Mega Drive Mini, is the Sega Saturn USB controller from Retrobit, another licensed controller. It is USB, so there should be no problem using this on a Mega Drive or Genesis Mini. It's slate gray, so it's clear. It has the colored buttons. I believe this was the scheme for the Japanese Sega Saturn. For PC, Mac, Steam, and Switch. You can use this on the Nintendo Switch, which at some point I think I would test just for the hell of it. Either way, we're going to get this box open and we're going to take a look at the controller further. The box does have the Sega Genesis color scheme. Let's go ahead and get this guy out of the box. As the Genesis one, you do have the manual. We don't need to look at that again. Now this has the same build quality, the same plastic. It is kind of cool to see the actual board inside. Now at some point I probably will be reselling this and passing this on to someone else because I do want this controller. I love the color scheme of it. The Japanese color scheme is cool, really cool. But I actually want the one with the connector that goes into the Sega Saturn itself. I don't really need two of them. I don't need a USB one as well. But you got the D-pad that feels pretty similar to a Sega Saturn controller, and once again I probably could compare that to the real thing, but of course it's in a bin, and I just don't want to go in that bin. It's kind of a pain in the butt not to have a game room and for your stuff to be displayed and have easy access. That's probably what he said. But either way, you got your 6 action buttons. You have your A, your B, and your C, which are color-coded. You have a pink start button. You have the L and R, but as I notice on here, there is no mode button on this one. I mean, not that that's a big deal, but that would come in handy if you decided to use this on the Retrobit, a Raspberry Pi, even a PC, and honestly, probably even a Genesis Mini would utilize a mode button, but it's not on here. You have a 10-foot cable. Once again, this one is colored. The wire is gray. I kind of like that. If you're looking for a 6-button controller for your Genesis Mini and actually like the way, I guess I gotta turn this upside down. You like the way the Sega Saturn controller feels in the hands. I guess that's personal preference whether you want this one or the Genesis one.
Alright, here we go. We got the Sega Saturn Japanese version USB translucent controller hooked to the Genesis Mini via USB, obviously. And as you can see, we're moving through the menu, so that is a plus. Let's go ahead and see if a game plays. Let's play some Streets of Rage. A button's working, got it to start. This is a really cool looking controller. Like I said, love the color scheme. Start button's doing, yeah, working. Now the only difference between this and that translucent blue one, this doesn't have a mode button, but neither does the 3-button controller that came with the Genesis Mini. And as you can see, the controller is working. Now because it does not have the mode button, obviously you have to hit the reset, I believe. And it brings up that menu. As you can see, it's kind of cool to have that ice blue one with the mode button, and you don't have to be near the console to get into this menu.
Alright, your next and last option for this video is the 8-bit M30 2.4 gig wireless gamepad. You might remember this controller because when Analog was going to release their Mega SG, these were the ones you can purchase separately for that console. They kind of teamed up. Now this controller does kind of upset me, and we're going to get into that after we unbox it. This is wireless, so if you're looking for a wireless option, here you go guys. A 6-button wireless controller for your Sega Genesis Mini. Let's get it out the box. Luckily enough, they decided not to put any tape on it, so it was easy to open. I'm going to slide this out the box, and here you go. You don't get any type of manual, I don't think. Nope. And it doesn't really tell you on the box how to connect this, so I'm assuming you just plug this in, turn this controller on, it will connect, as you will see in the test part of this video. You do get a micro USB. There's got to be some reason why these companies are deciding to stick with micro USB instead of going C. But here you go, here's the controller. The build quality is pretty good. I already got stuff all over it. I don't know where this white stuff came from. Kind of upsetting, but it looks like if I keep wiping, it will come off. Build quality is pretty good. The plastic is pretty good. It is on the light side. You have the original D-pad for the Genesis. I kind of like this better than all the other ones. All the other ones felt kind of plasticky. This one has a slight rubber texture to it, so that's kind of nice. You have your 6 buttons here, which feel really, really nice. They do have a really nice tactile sound. You got your start button. The start button is plastic, not rubber, like you would have seen in the original 6-button Genesis controller, I believe. Who knows? Once again, I'm wrong. I probably should have just taken all that stuff out of the bin and got the controller so we can see. Maybe I'll do that in another video. You have what I believe is a hotkey, so this thing will work with your Raspberry Pi. This, I guess, is a select or menu button. I'm probably getting all of this wrong. Probably should have tested this prior to making this video, but that's not how I roll. I just wing it right out the box, test it during the video. That's just how I do things on We Deem. Oh, look at me guys, I am a fool. There is a manual. It was right in the plastic. I'm blind. Let's go ahead and flip this open. Alright, so this is the start button, which I'm guessing is some sort of hotkey maybe. Something extra. Right in the middle is select, like I said, and right here is your home button. So I wonder if this will take you to the home menu of the Sega Genesis Mini. I know for a fact if you program it right on the Raspberry Pi. Up top you have your L and your R, and that's about it. On the back it says 8Bitdo. I know I keep turning that upside down, you fool. And on top here you have your indicator light for connecting. It looks like there's another light here. I'm not entirely sure what that light is for, but I guess we'll find out when we're connecting this to the Mini. And you got your micro USB up there. And here's the little dongle, and this is where we're going to get to what upsets me about this controller. This controller was $24.99, I believe, which is not bad for a wireless controller. I already have 2 of these controllers, but the dongle is a Genesis connector, and I could not use those on, obviously, the Sega Genesis Mini. Why wouldn't they sell this? And I've seen the 8Bitdo USB dongle, but it's going for 20 bucks by itself. I'm not buying it, paying $20 on just a dongle when I could have got the dongle and the controller for another 5 bucks. So it would have been nice to see this maybe going for $10. I would have picked that up so I can use the controllers I already have instead of having to buy another one. So that's really upsetting. I kind of wish they would have done what Retrobit did with a wireless version of this controller. I'm going to be picking that up from Castlemania Games. I will leave a link for that in the description as well. They're on pre-order on Amazon. I don't know if they were already being sold, but they're sold out. They actually include 2 different USB dongles, one with the USB connector, the other with the console's original connector, and that's exactly why that Sega Saturn Controller is going bye-bye. Those will also be an option for the Genesis Mini, which unfortunately is not in this video because I don't have a controller. It has to be pre-ordered. Maybe in a future video or on my Instagram, I will show that controller working. That Instagram link will be in the description down below. Don't forget to go follow me on Instagram. I do post pictures of stuff that I'm picking up, as I said. Maybe in the future, I am posting short test videos, me test videos on there, stuff that won't make a full video, just to show you guys how things are working and that wireless controller Retrobit on there. Either way, right now, currently, the 8Bitdo, I love the design of the controller. The construction is pretty good. It feels really good in the hands. I know you guys have to watch this upside down because this doesn't look right. It has all the necessary buttons to take this from your Sega Genesis Mini over to your PC or your Raspberry Pi and play some games other than Genesis games. The price is not bad at $25, $24.99. It's not going to break your bank. It's a pretty good option. But if you use for 50 bucks, it's not bad for 2 wireless controllers.
Alright, we got the 8Bitdo M30 hooked up to the Genesis Mini via the USB dongle that is included, and pretty much all you had to do was hit the start button and it automatically connected. As you can see, we're moving around the menu with the D-pad. I really like the D-pad on this 8Bitdo. I think the controller feels really good in the hands. That's what she said. I know that joke is played out, but either way, the button layouts feel good. You have your L&R, which you can't really utilize in here, as I said. There is a fighting game right here. Should have used that on Sega Saturn Controller, but either way, I mean, that game sucks. Start button's working. As you can see, the controller is working. It seems really responsive. Except for the fact that I stink. As you can see, buttons don't do anything. But this is a really bad port of this anyway. Personally think it's really slow and kind of boring.
Well, what's the final verdict? Well, Turns out only 3 of the 5 controllers contained in this video actually panned out. Unfortunately, this Hyperkin and this Retrobit dual link cable Street Fighter controller for the Genesis unfortunately did not work. So that was kind of a bummer. I really liked this controller. I really would have liked to seen this one work on the Sega Genesis Mini, but unfortunately it didn't. And God, this is one of the bad things about having cats. Hair everywhere and you cannot get rid of it. But either way, you had the Sega Saturn Controller here, USB. It worked perfectly. The only downfall to it is it did not have a mode button. That's not too much of a loss because you can always reset the console from the console. With the reset button, that will bring up the menu, so that wasn't on here. The good thing about this ice blue Genesis controller from Retrobit, it actually has a mode button right here, and that did bring up the menu, so you didn't have to go over to the console and hit the button itself. And then you have the best of all if you're looking for a wireless option, and that is the 8Bitdo M30 Genesis controller that was made specifically for the Genesis Mini. Now, the one thing I told you that I was upset about is I wish that 8Bitdo would sell these separately. This specific one for a lot cheaper. They do sell a USB dongle separately, but it's going for like 20 bucks. So why would I ever buy that when I can get this controller with that dongle for 25 bucks? Just wish I could have used the M30s I already had for my analog Mega SG, but that wasn't an option. Either way, these 3 controllers that do work, they work really well. They feel really close to the original controller. And if you're looking to purchase these, as I said in this video, there will be a link to that in the description down below. You can go ahead and pick these up. These controllers, however, if you're looking for a controller for your Sega Genesis, your actual Genesis, or your Mega SG, this Street Fighter controller is still a pretty good option. It does come with a dual link cable. It has a USB and the original Genesis connector. But as for the Genesis Mini, it's useless. So you won't be able to use this on here as of now. I don't know, as I said, if any of the hacks will kind of change that. You'll be able to map the buttons. But even then, I don't think that this will function on here. I find it kind of weird, and I guess it has something to do with the board in there. Why, if that is USB, it don't work. If anybody can explain that, I'm definitely interested in hearing the technical reasoning behind that, why this wouldn't work. And you can leave those down in the comments down below. If you guys have found any really good 6-button controller options for the Genesis Mini, please leave those in the comments down below. I might further test some more and maybe throw some clips up on my Instagram. So don't forget to follow me at We Deem channel on Instagram. Those links will also be in the description down below. If you liked what was contained in this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you thought this video plain sucked, you can always hit that thumbs down. If you found this video to be of some sort of value, do consider sharing amongst friends and the rest of your social media. And as always, don't forget to let me spend my money so you don't waste yours by hitting that subscribe button.